4 35-minute sections for the new 4-section LSAT, plus a 10-minute break. So that works out to about 2 hours, 35 minutes. And it actually used to be 5 sections before the pandemic, before the flex as well. So it was actually ended up being, including like bubbling in your name back on the paper LSAT, it was probably like 3.5 hours total. Both the 3-section flex and the new 4-section online LSAT, they're online. You can take it at home, or if your at-home environment isn't suitable, you can take it at a hotel or Airbnb. LSAC will reimburse you up to $125. And so you're not going to a test center with a bunch of other people. There's not that commuting time. There's not the stress and anxiety of having other test takers around, the proctors walking around. You're not taking all that time to bubble in your name on a Scantron or anything like that. We're past all of that. So test day is actually a lot shorter. And you can, if your home environment is suitable, you can do all your practice tests at the same desk on the same device that you'll do the actual thing. There were a lot of issues with the online proctoring in the earlier administrations of the exam moving online back in May and June 2020. They've largely worked out a lot of that since, fortunately, and what they've worked out will presumably continue as we go into the 4-section version. Of course, there will always be tech issues for some percentage of folks. There are things, however, you can do to minimize the likelihood of that happening. One is to check all the ProctorU requirements. The LSAT online is administered by ProctorU, which also administers several other exams online, like the GMAT and the GRE. So go on their site before test day, check all the tech specifications, make sure that you're using an appropriate device, and ideally do that far in advance. You can get used to it for your practice tests as well, using that same device. There's also on ProctorU, there's a tested out simulation where you can check if your device and its updates and such with software are suitable for their system. It's test-it-out. So testitout.proctoru.com. And you can actually walk through it either automated, or if you scroll down, there's also a support rep you can connect with live. You want to take every practice test like it's game day, and you want to take those with the gravity that you'll take the actual thing, knowing that, hey, this matters. I don't want to ramp up the anxiety for folks or anything, but I also think you got to know that the LSAT is the number one factor in the law school admission process. And so if it requires like watching Legally Blonde or something like that, or putting up a picture of your dream law school to motivate you throughout your studying process, that can help. And look at that before you take every practice test, and look at it before the actual thing to know like, hey, this is real. This matters. I think on test day itself, folks will typically feel that, but it's also worth making sure that you take every practice test as if it were the actual. And the benefit is that while it can ramp up the seriousness of your practice tests, it can then relatively diminish the negative stress you might feel on test day itself, so that it feels like just another run through. I think a lot about acute stress versus chronic stress when we're talking about things like adrenaline, taking the test and such. I mean, chronic stress while you're studying for the LSAT for 3 to 6 months or longer, obviously that's not going to serve you to be in a constant state of worry that entire period. But alternative, and that's where things like mindfulness meditation can help, which I also highly recommend. But acute stress in terms of like, okay, well, maybe once a week or twice a week at most, I'm taking a practice test. That's stressful because I place importance on the practice test score. And on the one hand, you don't want to place too much importance on those scores because it's not the real thing and you don't want to be stressed out needlessly. But the benefit is that you get used to that feeling of the heart lifting and racing and knowing that, hey, what's going to happen, and dealing with that for 2+ hours. You're going to have that on game day also. Better get used to it and know how to bring yourself back down. And that's where mindfulness can help, not only before the exam to center yourself, but then going in, if you get bogged down on a question, you panic as a result, knowing how to snap yourself back out of that. You got your 3 scored sections, again, one of games, one of reasoning, one of reading comp, and then you have the 4th that could be anything. So first off is, okay, you say, well, the experimental section could be 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th mixed in with the others. It could also be any of the types. And so you've got 4 different potential placements. You've also got 3 different types. So you're dealing with what, roughly like 12 different potential permutations. Plus you got to consider that games, reasoning, reading comp can appear in any order. So I'm not a combinatorics expert or anything, but there's a lot of different combinations you could end up with, right? So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, you can deliberately try to get every single combination in your practice tests. I recommend taking at least 10 practice tests. And I just talked about more combinations than that. So it's not like you have to do every single iteration or variation there, but I would say just randomize it. randomize it. And LSAC's Law Hub, which is the best place to do practice tests since they look exactly like the ProctorU system on test day, take your practice tests in there. But the problem is that they only present it in the order with games being first, logical reasoning being second and third, and then reading comp being fourth. So you need to do them in out of order, which I recommend doing using self-paced mode. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.